Private Alan Miller stood at his post, back straight and eyes forward. The gleaming walls of the royal palace of Queen Zalthera reflected the blue-green light of the twin suns. Alan was the only human in this section of the palace. His dark blue uniform marked him as part of the Galactic Diplomatic Corps, but the small silver pin on his collar showed he belonged to the Royal Security Detail. Not many humans earned such a position. 3 years had passed since Earth joined the Vespan Alliance. Humans were still the new kids in space. Most aliens saw them as weak, simple, or just not worth noticing. Human guards usually got stuck with boring jobs far away from anything important, but Alan was different. He worked hard and paid attention to alien customs. He learned the complex rules of the Arvani royal court faster than any other human. The Arvani were tall insect-like beings with hard outer shells and strict social rules. Their queen, Zalthera, stood nearly 8 feet tall with a shiny blue shell that changed colors slightly when she moved. Alan watched the tall Arvani officials walk past his post. None of them looked at him. To them, he was just another piece of furniture. At first, this bothered Alan, but now he saw it as an advantage. Being invisible meant he could see things others missed. For weeks, he had noticed strange things happening in the court. Ambassador Creel, an old and respected Arvani with a cracked shell showing his age, had been meeting with visitors who kept their faces hidden. Alan recognized their movements as Sargosi, the longtime enemies of the Arvani. The Sargosi were shorter than Arvani but faster, with red shells and 4 arms instead of 2. The Arvani and Sargosi had been at war for over 50 years. Only recently had they signed a peace treaty. Many on both sides still didn't trust each other. Alan shifted his weight slightly, careful to maintain his perfect posture. Queen Zalthera would soon pass through these halls on her way to a meeting. He thought about what he had seen the night before. He had been patrolling the eastern wing when he spotted Ambassador Creel hurrying down a rarely used corridor. Following at a safe distance, Alan saw Creel enter a small meeting room. The door didn't close fully and Alan could hear voices. "The Peace Monument dedication on Voxus 4 is our chance," a strange voice had said. "The Queen will be vulnerable during the ceremony." "Everything is prepared," Ambassador Creel had replied. "The security protocols have been adjusted as you requested." Alan had quickly moved away before he could be discovered, but what he heard troubled him deeply. The Peace Monument on Voxus 4 was supposed to symbolize the end of hostilities between the Arvani and the Sargosi. Queen Zalthera was scheduled to attend its dedication in just 3 days. Now, as Alan stood at his post, his mind raced. He needed to report what he had heard, but who would believe him? Humans had no standing in the Arvani court. His direct superior, Lieutenant Grace Howard, was herself barely tolerated by the Arvani officials. The sound of clicking mandibles brought Alan back to attention. Court officials were lining up, a sign that Queen Zalthera was approaching. The tall Arvani guards took their positions, their polished shell armor gleaming. Queen Zalthera glided into the hall, her movements graceful despite her size. Her large compound eyes seemed to take in everything at once. 4 personal guards surrounded her, their posture even more rigid than Alan's. As the Queen passed his position, Alan remained perfectly still as protocol demanded. For a moment, he thought he saw her glance in his direction, but it happened so quickly he couldn't be sure. After the Queen had passed, the court officials dispersed. Alan's shift was nearly over. As he prepared to leave his post, Lieutenant Howard approached him. "Miller, you're needed for an additional assignment," she said, her voice low. "The Queen's visit to Voxus 4 has been moved up. We leave tomorrow at first light." Alan's heart skipped a beat. "Tomorrow? But I thought the ceremony wasn't for 3 more days." Lieutenant Howard shrugged. "Change of plans." Ambassador Creel suggested it would be a good gesture of trust to arrive early. "You'll be part of the advanced security team." This wasn't right. Everything was happening too fast. "Lieutenant, I need to report something," Alan said carefully. Howard looked around to make sure no one was listening. "What is it, Miller? I overheard a conversation last night. I think the ceremony might be some kind of trap." Howard's expression hardened. "Do you have proof?" "No, but Then keep it to yourself, she interrupted. Do you know what happens to humans who make false accusations against high-ranking Arvani officials? Nothing good, Miller. Alan fell silent. Howard was right without proof. His words meant nothing. Worse, he might lose the position he had. Work so hard to earn. Report to Docking Bay 3 at 0500 hours, Howard said. Pack for a 3-day mission? After she left, Alan stood alone in the hallway. The gleaming walls no longer seemed beautiful. They felt cold and threatening. He had just one night to figure out what to do. In his small quarters, Alan paced back and forth. The room was simple: a bed, a desk, and a small window that looked out over the capital city of the Arvani Empire. The spires and domes of the buildings glowed with internal light as darkness fell. Alan sat at his desk and pulled up information about Voxus 4 on his tablet. The planet had been a major battlefield during the war. Now it was being turned into a symbol of peace. The monument was built on the site of the war's bloodiest battle. He searched for information about the monument itself. The design had been a joint project between Arvani and Sargosi architects. It featured a tall central spire with 2 interlocking rings, representing the 2 species coming together. Something caught Alan's eye. The monument's power source was unusual, a quantum resonance generator. Alan wasn't an engineer, but he knew such technology could be weaponized. With the right modifications, it could create a field that would be harmless to Sargosi, but deadly to Arvani. Alan dug deeper. The security plans for the ceremony had been updated 3 times in the past week. Each update reduced the number of security scans and shortened the safe distance between the Queen and the monument. This was the proof he needed. But who could he tell? Lieutenant Howard had made it clear she wouldn't listen. Going to higher-ranking human officials would take too long. By tomorrow, the Queen would be on her way to Voxus IV. Alan made his decision. He would have to break protocol and speak directly to the Queen. The punishment for such an action could be severe, but the alternative was unthinkable. He set his alarm for an hour before his reporting time. If he was going to save the Queen, he would need to act quickly and decisively. As he lay down to sleep, Alan wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life or possibly preventing a disaster that could reignite the war. Either way, by this time tomorrow, everything would be different. Alan woke before his alarm could sound. He had barely slept, his mind filled with worry about what he planned to do. The rules were clear. No one spoke to Queen Zalthera unless spoken to first. Breaking this rule could mean losing his job or worse. He got dressed in his formal uniform and tucked his data tablet into his pocket. The evidence he had gathered wasn't much, but it was all he had. The hallways were quiet as he made his way to the royal docking bay. Most of the palace was still asleep, but he knew the Queen always arrived early before any journey. The royal transport ship gleamed under the bright lights of the docking bay. It was a beautiful vessel, its smooth silver hull decorated with the blue and gold colors of the Arvani royal house. Workers scurried around, loading supplies and checking systems. Alan spotted Lieutenant Howard speaking with the ship's captain near the main entrance ramp. He would need to avoid her. If she saw him approaching the Queen, she would stop him before he could say a word. He circled around to the smaller side entrance, where the royal guards would bring the Queen. His heart pounded in his chest. What he was about to do went against everything in his training. But the safety of the Queen and perhaps the peace between 2 species depended on it. Movement at the far end of the docking bay caught his attention. Ambassador Creel had arrived early too. The old Arvani was speaking in low tones with a ship technician. The technician nodded and then entered the ship. Something about the exchange made Alan even more certain that his suspicions were correct. The sound of clicking mandibles and the rhythmic march of the royal guard echoed through the corridor. They were coming. Alan pressed himself against the wall near the side entrance, trying to look like he belonged there. The guards would recognize him as part of the security detail, but they would be focused on protecting the Queen. Queen Zalthera appeared, surrounded by 4 tall guards. Her blue carapace caught the light, sending rainbow reflections across the walls. She moved with grace and power, her compound eyes sweeping the area. This was his moment. When the Queen passed him, Alan stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice louder than he intended. The effect was immediate. The 4 guards turned toward him, their weapons raised. The clicking sound of their mandibles showed their anger. One of them moved between Alan and the Queen. "Stand back, human," the guard warned. Queen Zalthera raised one long, delicate limb. "Wait," she said, her voice musical but firm. "Let him speak." The guards hesitated but moved aside slightly. Alan could see Lieutenant Howard rushing toward them from across the docking bay, her face pale with shock. "Your Majesty," Alan said quickly, "I believe you are walking into a trap. The ceremony on Vox's 4, it's not what it seems." Ambassador Creel hurried over, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "This is outrageous. Guards, remove this human at once." Queen Zalthera's compound eyes studied Alan. "Serious accusations require evidence, human guard." Alan pulled out his tablet with shaking hands. "I have some, Your Majesty. The security protocols have been changed multiple times, always reducing safety measures. The monument uses quantum resonance technology that could be modified to harm Arvani physiology. And I overheard Ambassador Creel discussing plans with someone I believe was a Sargosi agent." Lieutenant Howard arrived, out of breath. "Your Majesty, I apologize for this breach of protocol. This guard will be removed and disciplined immediately." "No," said the Queen, her voice cutting through the tension. "I wish to hear more." She turned to Ambassador Creel. "What do you say to these claims?" Creel's mandibles clicked in what Alan recognized as the Arvani equivalent of nervous laughter. "Absurd, Your Majesty. This human knows nothing of our technology or politics. The changes to security were made to show trust to our Sargosi allies, nothing more." Queen Zalthera was silent for a moment. The entire docking bay seemed to hold its breath. "Both of you will join me in my private chamber aboard the ship," she finally said. "We will discuss this matter further." Alan felt a mix of relief and new worry. At least the Queen was willing to listen. But now he would need to convince her with the limited evidence he had. Inside the Queen's chamber, Alan felt very small. The room was designed for the taller Arvani, with high ceilings and large furniture. Queen Zalthera sat on an elevated chair, looking down at Alan and Ambassador Creel. "Now, human guard, explain everything you know," she said. Alan took a deep breath and began. He explained how he had noticed the strange meetings, how he had overheard the conversation, and what he had discovered about the monument's technology. As he spoke, he connected his tablet to the room's display system, showing the security changes and technical specifications. The quantum resonance generator in the monument could be modified to emit a field that would affect Arvani nervous systems. He explained. It wouldn't harm Sargosi at all. Ambassador Creel's shell color darkened with anger. "This is a fabrication!" "Your Majesty, this human is trying to sabotage the peace we have worked so hard to achieve." The Queen raised a limb for silence. If what the human says is true, it can be verified." "Commander Zith?" One of the royal guards stepped forward. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Take a team and inspect the monument on Vox's 4 immediately. Use a separate ship and maintain communication silence. Report only to me?" "At once, Your Majesty," the guard said, bowing low before leaving the chamber. Queen Zalthera turned her compound eyes to Alan. "If your warning proves false, human, the consequences will be severe." "I understand, Your Majesty," Alan replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "And if it proves true," she continued, fixing her gaze on Ambassador Creel, "the consequences will be even more severe." Creel's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This is unnecessary, Your Majesty. The ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow." "Commander Zith will not have time to properly inspect. The ceremony will be delayed," Queen Zalthera interrupted. "I will announce that I wish to spend more time in meditation before such an important event." Alan noticed a subtle change in Creel's posture. The ambassador was worried. "Until Commander Zith returns, both of you will remain aboard this ship," the Queen continued. "Neither of you will communicate with anyone without my permission." Lieutenant Howard, who had been standing quietly by the door, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if I may, Private Miller is under my command. I should remain with him." The Queen studied Howard for a moment. "Very well, Lieutenant, you may stay as well." After the Queen left, guards were posted outside the door. Alan, Lieutenant Howard, and Ambassador Creel were effectively prisoners together in a small waiting area adjoining the royal chamber. "You've made a serious mistake, human," Creel said, his voice low and threatening. "Even if no trap is found, you have insulted me and damaged relations between our species." Lieutenant Howard looked at Alan with a mix of anger and worry. "I told you to keep your concerns to yourself, Miller." "I couldn't," Alan replied simply. "Too much was at stake. Now all they could do was wait for Commander Zith to return." Alan hoped he had made the right choice. Everything depended on what the commander would find on Voxus 4. The hours passed slowly in the waiting area of the royal ship. Alan sat quietly, trying to ignore the angry looks from Lieutenant Howard and the cold stare of Ambassador Creel. No one had spoken for the last hour. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Alan checked the time again. Commander Zith had been gone for 6 hours. The journey to Voxus 4 took about 3 hours each way, which meant he should be returning soon if everything had gone well. "You've destroyed your career for nothing," Lieutenant Howard finally said, breaking the silence. "Even if by some miracle you're right, humans will never be trusted in the royal court again." Alan looked at her. "I'd rather lose my job than let the Queen walk into danger." Ambassador Creel made a sharp clicking sound that Alan knew was a sign of contempt. Such noble words from a species that has barely left its own solar system. "You understand nothing of galactic politics." Before Alan could respond, the door slid open. Queen Zolthera entered, followed by Commander Zith. The commander's usually shiny green shell looked dull with dust, showing he had indeed been to the planet's surface. Everyone stood immediately. Alan's heart raced as he tried to read the expressions of the two Arvani, but their alien features gave nothing away. Queen Zolthera spoke first. "Commander Zith has completed his inspection." Alan held his breath. Everything depended on what the commander had found. Commander Zith stepped forward. The monument's quantum resonance generator had been modified. When activated during the ceremony, it would have created a field lethal to Arvani physiology within a radius of 50 meters. The room fell silent. Alan felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had been right. "This is impossible," Ambassador Creel said, his voice higher than normal. "There must be some mistake." "There is no mistake, Commander," Zith replied firmly. "My team found Sargosi modification signatures in the generator's control systems. We also discovered hidden chambers beneath the monument where Sargosi agents were waiting." Queen Zaldora's compound eyes fixed on Ambassador Creel. "Explain yourself, Ambassador." Creel's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "I know nothing of this, Your Majesty. I have served the Hive faithfully for 30 cycles. I would never betray you." "We also found this," Commander Zith continued, holding up a small communication device. "It contains encrypted messages between someone in the royal palace and the Sargosi agents. Our technicians are working to decode them now." Alan watched as Ambassador Creel's shell color darkened, a sign of fear among the Arvani. The ambassador was beginning to realize how much trouble he was in. "Take Ambassador Creel to secure quarters," Queen Zolthera ordered. 2 guards immediately moved to flank the ambassador. "He will remain there until we decode those messages." As Creel was led away, he glared at Alan with pure hatred in his alien eyes. When the ambassador was gone, Queen Zolthera turned to Alan. "It seems I owe you my life, human guard." Alan bowed his head respectfully. "I'm just glad I was able to help, Your Majesty." "How did you notice what my own advisors missed?" the Queen asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Alan thought for a moment. "I think it's because no one pays attention to humans in the court. We're easy to overlook, so people speak more freely around us. They forget we're there." Lieutenant Howard looked uncomfortable. She had clearly not expected events to unfold this way. "A valuable insight," the Queen said. "Perhaps being underestimated has its advantages." Commander Zith stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we have a more immediate problem." The Sargosi will know by now that their agents have been discovered. This could lead to a diplomatic crisis. Queen Zalthera was quiet for a moment, thinking, we need to handle this carefully. If we publicly accuse the Sargosi government, it could restart the war. But we cannot let this attack go unanswered. If I may make a suggestion, Alan said hesitantly, all eyes turned to him. Even Lieutenant Howard looked surprised that he would. Speak up again. Go ahead, the Queen said. What if we turn their trap against them? Alan suggested. We could modify the quantum resonance generator to emit a harmless but visible field during the ceremony. When nothing happens to you, the Sargosi, who are expecting you to fall, will reveal themselves through their reaction. Commander Zith clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The human's idea has merit? We could also place hidden observers throughout the crowd to identify those who seem disappointed by your survival. Queen Zaldora's antennae twitched slightly, which Alan had learned was a sign of approval. Yes, instead of avoiding the trap, we will use it to identify our true enemies. She turned to Lieutenant Howard. Lieutenant, your guard has proven his worth. I want him to join the planning team for this operation. Howard looked stunned. Yes, Your Majesty. Over the next few hours, Alan found himself working alongside the elite Arvani Royal Security team. They gathered in a large strategy room aboard the ship, surrounded by holographic displays showing the monument and its surroundings. Captain Samantha Ford, the human diplomatic liaison, joined them. She was the highest-ranking human in the Arvani court, and her presence showed how seriously the Queen was taking the situation. Good work, Miller, she said quietly to Alan. Though next time, maybe try going through proper channels first. Alan nodded. There wasn't time, Captain. I know, she replied with a small smile. That's why you're not being court-martialed. Commander Zith called for everyone's attention. Here is what we know. The monument's quantum resonance generator was set to emit a field that would disrupt Arvani neural pathways. The effect would have appeared like a natural cerebral shutdown, what humans might call a stroke. He pointed to the holographic display. The Sargosi agents were positioned in these underground chambers. Based on the equipment we found, they planned to emerge after the Queen's collapse, claiming they were there to help but actually ensuring no medical aid could reach her in time. Who would benefit from killing Queen Zalthera? Captain Ford asked. There are factions among both the Arvani and Sargosi who oppose the peace, Commander Zith explained. A dead queen at a peace monument would certainly restart the war. Alan studied the holographic display of the monument. Something about the design bothered him. May I? He asked, gesturing to the controls. Commander Zith nodded. Alan adjusted the display to show the monument from different angles. Look at this, he said, highlighting a section of the monument's base. These markings aren't just decorative. They're old Sargosi military symbols. This whole monument was designed as an insult. It's celebrating their victories, not peace. The room fell silent as everyone examined the markings. He's right, Captain Ford said finally. Those symbols would be recognized by any Sargosi military veteran. Commander Zith looked at Alan with new respect. How did you recognize them? I studied both Arvani and Sargosi culture and history before coming here, Alan explained. These symbols appear in historical accounts of the war. Queen Zalthera, who had been listening silently, spoke. So the monument itself is a message, a hidden boast of Sargosi superiority disguised as a peace offering. Yes, Your Majesty, Alan said. And if you had died there, it would have been the ultimate victory for them. The Queen's compound eyes seemed to glow with intensity. We will proceed with the ceremony as planned, but we will not be the only ones surprised by what happens there. The royal ship landed on Voxus 4 the next day. From the outside, everything appeared normal. The landing pad was decorated with both Arvani and Sargosi flags. A large crowd had gathered to witness the historic event. Alan stood with the security team, watching the preparations through a view screen. He wore new armor, sleek and black, matching what the elite Arvani guards wore. Queen Zalthera had personally ordered it for him. It was a great honor, but it also made him very visible. If the Sargosi realized he had helped uncover their plot, he would be a target. Nervous? Asked Captain Ford, coming to stand beside him. Alan nodded, a little. Everything depends on our timing. The team is ready, she assured him. Commander, Zith has his best people in position. Their plan was risky but clever. The modified quantum resonance generator would now emit a harmless light show instead of the deadly field the Sargosi expected. When Queen Zalthera remained standing, the conspirators would reveal themselves through their surprise and disappointment. Hidden Arvani agents throughout the crowd would identify and mark them for later arrest. Meanwhile, the communication device found in the monument was yielding results. Several messages had been decoded, confirming Ambassador Creel's involvement. But they also suggested he was not the mastermind, merely a pawn in a larger game. It's time, Commander Zith announced. The exit ramp of the royal ship lowered. The crowd cheered as the royal procession began. First came the honor guard, then high-ranking court officials. Queen Zalthera would emerge last, as was tradition. Alan took his position near the bottom of the ramp. His job was to scan the crowd for any immediate threats. From here, he could see the monument clearly. It stood tall and gleaming in the center of the plaza, its design seeming to reach toward the sky. The hidden Sargosi military symbols were visible to him now that he knew where to look, but most people would never notice them. A group of Sargosi officials waited at the base of the monument. Their leader, High Chancellor Vrex, stood at the front. His red carapace was decorated with gold designs showing his high status. Alan studied his posture, looking for signs of nervousness or anticipation, but the Sargosi leader appeared calm. Queen Zalthera appeared at the top of the ramp. The crowd's cheering grew louder. She moved with grace and dignity, her blue carapace catching the sunlight. 6 royal guards surrounded her, with Commander Zith at the lead. Alan watched carefully as the Queen made her way toward the monument. High Chancellor Vrex stepped forward to greet her, extending his upper pair of arms in the traditional Sargosi gesture of peace. Queen Zalthera, the Chancellor said, his voice amplified for the crowd to hear. This monument stands as a symbol of our new friendship. The past is behind us. Today we look to the future. The Queen's antennae moved in a graceful pattern that signaled agreement. The Arvani people welcome this new era of peace, High Chancellor. Let us show the galaxy that former enemies can become the strongest of allies. Alan tensed as the Queen and the Chancellor walked together toward the center of the monument. This was the most dangerous moment. If the Sargosi had a backup plan, they would act now. A soft voice spoke in Alan's earpiece. Movement in Sector 4. It was one of the hidden Arvani agents. 3 Sargosi moving to higher ground. Alan signaled to Captain Ford, who nodded and quietly directed a team to investigate. Everything needed to appear normal until the moment was right. The Queen and the Chancellor reached the center of the monument. A small control panel waited there, with 2 ceremonial buttons, one blue for the Arvani, one red for the Sargosi. Together, we activate this monument to peace, High Chancellor Vrex announced. When these buttons are pressed, the quantum resonance generator will create a field of harmony that symbolizes our 2 species coming together. What the crowd didn't know was that the field of harmony had originally been designed to kill the Queen. Now, thanks to Commander Zith's team, it would produce only a harmless light display. Queen Zalthera and High Chancellor Vrex placed their hands over the buttons. On the count of 3, the Chancellor said. 1. Do 3, they pressed the buttons together. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a soft hum began to build. Light emerged from the center of the monument, forming a beautiful pattern of blue and red waves that danced together in the air. Alan watched High Chancellor Vrex closely. The Sargosi leader's upper arms twitched slightly, a sign of surprise. He had expected something very different to happen. In his earpiece, Alan could hear reports coming in from the hidden agents. Subject in Sector 2 showing signs of agitation. 3 individuals near the east entrance are attempting to leave quietly. High-ranking Sargosi official is sending an emergency communication. The plan was working. The conspirators were revealing themselves through their reactions. Queen Zalthera stood tall and unharmed in the center of the monument. Bathed in the light display, she turned to address the crowd. "This beautiful sight represents our shared future," she said. "But before we can truly move forward, we must be honest about the past and the present." High Chancellor Vrex shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty?" The Queen's voice grew stronger. "This monument was designed not as a symbol of peace but as a weapon. Today it was meant to kill me and restart the war between our peoples." Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. The Sargosi officials looked at each other in confusion and alarm. "This is outrageous," High Chancellor Vrex protested. "Who would make such a claim?" "We have proof," Queen Zalthera said calmly. "Your agents modified the quantum resonance generator to emit a field that would be lethal to Arvani physiology. The monument itself contains hidden Sargosi military symbols celebrating your victories in the war." The Chancellor's red carapace darkened with emotion. "These are serious accusations, Your Majesty." "Yes, they are," the Queen agreed. "But they are true. We have identified the conspirators among both our peoples. Some have already been detained. Others are being marked for arrest even now." As if on cue, Arvani security forces began moving through the crowd, approaching the individuals who had revealed themselves through their reactions to the Queen's survival. High Chancellor Vrex looked around nervously. His upper arms twitched. Again, as he saw his agents being surrounded. "I know nothing of this plot," he insisted. "If there are traitors among my delegation, they acted without my knowledge." Queen Zaldora's compound eyes studied him. "That remains to be seen, High Chancellor. Our investigation is ongoing." Alan watched as the security teams worked efficiently, detaining suspects without causing panic. The crowd was confused but calm. Many were taking pictures of the light display, unaware of the drama unfolding around them. Captain Ford approached Alan. "We've secured most of the suspects, no resistance so far." "What about the Chancellor?" Alan asked quietly. "Commander Zith is watching him closely," she replied. "We don't have direct evidence of his involvement yet, but his reaction was suspicious." Alan nodded. "The real test will come when we interrogate the suspects. Someone will talk eventually." Captain Ford smiled slightly. "Oh, because you were paying attention when no one else was. Not bad for a human guard." Alan looked toward the monument where Queen Zalthera stood, still addressing the crowd. The light display continued to dance around her, beautiful rather than deadly. "I just did what anyone would do," he said. "No," Captain Ford replied. "You did what no one else dared to do. You spoke up when it mattered most." As they watched, Queen Zalthera turned and looked directly at Alan, even from a distance. He could feel the weight of her gaze. With a subtle gesture, she beckoned him to join her at the monument. Alan made his way through the crowd toward the monument. People moved aside for him, some looking curious about the human in Arvani Royal Guard armor. He felt strange being the center of attention after spending so long being invisible in the royal court. As he approached, he could see Queen Zalthera standing tall at the center of the monument. The beautiful lights from the modified quantum resonance generator still danced around her. High Chancellor Vrex remained nearby, his posture stiff with tension. Commander Zith stood alert, watching the Sargosi leader for any sudden moves. When Alan reached the monument, he bowed deeply to the Queen as protocol required. "Rise, Alan Miller," Queen Zalthera said, her voice carrying clearly across the plaza. "Today you have proven that loyalty and courage know no species." Alan straightened, aware that everyone was watching. The Queen's use of his full name was significant. In Arvani culture, naming someone publicly was a sign of great respect. "The human knew of this supposed plot?" High Chancellor Vrex asked, his tone suspicious. "How convenient." Queen Zaldora's compound eyes turned to the Chancellor. "He observed what others missed because your conspirators thought humans too unimportant to be cautious around. Their mistake has become our advantage." From his earpiece, Alan heard Captain Ford's voice. "We finished the preliminary interrogations. 5 suspects have confirmed the plot. They're saying High Chancellor Vrex authorized it personally." Alan kept his face neutral, not wanting to give away this new information, but Commander Zith had received the same message. The Arvani security chief subtly moved his guards closer to the Chancellor. Your Majesty, Commander Zith said formally, we have received confirmation of the Chancellor's involvement from multiple sources. High Chancellor Vrex's red carapace darkened with emotion. His forearms twitched and the guards tensed, ready for any aggressive move. Lies! The Chancellor hissed. You cannot prove anything. We already have, Queen Zalthera replied calmly. Ambassador Creel has provided details of your meetings. The agents we captured have confirmed your orders. The evidence is overwhelming. The Chancellor looked around desperately, seeing his options disappearing. The crowd watched in stunned silence as this historic peace ceremony transformed into a tense standoff. Suddenly, Vrex lunged forward, reaching for Queen Zalthera with all four arms. He moved with surprising speed for his size. But Alan was faster. Without thinking, Alan stepped between the Queen and the attacking Chancellor. He blocked the first two arms and ducked under the second pair. Years of training took over as he used the Chancellor's momentum against him, redirecting him away from the Queen. Commander Zith and his guards swarmed in, surrounding the Chancellor and forcing him to the ground. The crowd gasped and moved back, as the struggle ended almost as quickly as it had begun. Take him away, Queen Zalthera ordered. He will stand trial for his crimes against both our peoples. As the guards led the Chancellor away, Alan realized he was breathing hard. The attack had happened so fast he had acted on pure instinct. Are you injured? The Queen asked him. No, Your Majesty, Alan replied. Are you? The Queen's antennae moved in what Alan recognized as the Arvani expression of amusement. I am unharmed, thanks to your quick action. The crisis was over, but the ceremony was clearly ruined. Queen Zalthera turned to address the stunned crowd. Today was meant to celebrate peace, she said, her voice strong and clear. Instead, we have uncovered deception and violence. But perhaps this is a more important moment than we planned. True peace cannot be built on lies. It must stand on truth and justice, she gestured to Alan. This human guard saw what many missed. He spoke when others were silent. Because of his courage, a plot was exposed and lives were saved. Let his actions today serve as an example to us all. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, they began to applaud. The sound grew until it filled the plaza. Alan stood awkwardly, unused to such attention. 3 days later, Alan found himself back in the royal palace on the Arvani homeworld. The events on Voxus 4 had changed everything. The conspiracy had been fully exposed. Ambassador Creel and High Chancellor Vrex were awaiting trial. Along with dozens of other conspirators from both species, Alan was summoned to the Grand Throne Room, where Queen Zalthera was holding court. He entered nervously, still not fully comfortable with the attention he had received since their return. The throne room was packed with Arvani officials and dignitaries. Alan saw Captain Ford and Lieutenant Howard standing to one side. Howard gave him a small nod, which from her was high praise. Alan approached the throne and bowed deeply to Queen Zalthera. Alan Miller, the Queen said, her voice echoing in the large chamber. Your actions have prevented a disaster that could have restarted the war between our peoples. For your service, you will be rewarded. Alan remained bowed. I only did my duty, Your Majesty. Rise, the Queen commanded. When Alan straightened, she continued. From this day forward, you will no longer serve as a regular guard. Alan's heart sank. Despite everything, was he being dismissed? Instead, Queen Zalthera continued, you will serve as my personal advisor on human affairs and as a liaison between our species. Your unique perspective has proven valuable, and I would have it available to me regularly. Alan was stunned. This was an unheard-of position for a human. I am honored, Your Majesty. The Queen's antennae moved in a pattern Alan now recognized as pleasure. Furthermore, I am establishing a new program. More humans will be trained and integrated into positions throughout the royal court. Your success has shown us that diversity of perspective strengthens us all. Captain Ford stepped forward. Your Majesty, if I may speak. The Queen nodded her permission. I would like to recommend that Private Miller be promoted to reflect his new responsibilities, Ford said. A wise suggestion, Queen Zalthera agreed. Alan Miller, you are hereby granted the rank of Royal Advisor, with all the privileges and responsibilities that entails. The Arvani officials clicked their mandibles in the traditional sound of approval. Alan could hardly believe what was happening. Just days ago, he had been a nearly invisible guard that no one noticed. Now he stood before the Queen's court, being honored beyond anything he could have imagined. Later, as the formal ceremony ended and the court began to disperse, Captain Ford approached him. "Congratulations, Advisor Miller," she said with a smile. "Quite a change from guard duty." Alan nodded. "It doesn't feel real yet." "You earned it," Ford replied. "Not just by noticing the plot, but by having the courage to speak up when it mattered." Lieutenant Howard joined them. "Well done, Miller," she said stiffly, clearly still adjusting to his new rank. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Alan replied politely. Commander Zith approached their small group. The tall Arvani security chief had developed a grudging respect for Alan during their mission. "The Queen has asked me to tell you that your first official duty will begin tomorrow," Zith said. "You will help review security protocols for the entire royal court." Alan nodded. "I'll do my best, Commander." As the others moved away, Alan took a moment to look around the grand throne room. The gleaming walls that had once seemed cold now felt like part of his new home. The Arvani officials who had once ignored him now acknowledged him with respectful gestures. Everything had changed because he had dared to speak up when he saw something wrong. In saving the Queen, he had also found his place in this complex alien world. Queen Zalthera, noticing him standing alone, gestured for him to approach her throne. "Is something troubling you, Advisor Miller?" she asked. Alan shook his head. "No, Your Majesty. I was just thinking about how quickly things can change." The Queen's compound eyes studied him. Indeed. Yesterday's enemies can become today's allies. The overlooked can become the essential. That is the lesson we must all learn if our species are to move forward together. Alan bowed in agreement. A new chapter was beginning not just for him, but for humans and Arvani alike, and he was ready for whatever challenges it might bring.